I said that there was sort of influx control, pass laws, and all of that. And I was fortunate that my father was a priest. So it meant that influx control measures didn't apply to the man of cloth, the clergy. So unlike the other people who had to move in and out, we were, as a family, established in Cape Town. So Joey has had this a couple of times, that I'm a Section 10A Bantu. What this means is that there was what was called the sort of Urban Areas Act, or I think it's formed sometimes, which said, look, who in the sort of black community, African community, Section 10A, Section 10B, Section 10C, which gave you certain rights. So luckily I was 10A, which meant that my father did not have to renew a pass to be in Cape Town. So in a way I was, with a couple of others, privileged. So we didn't have the pressure of having to be moved out of Cape Town. And my father didn't have to renew the pass all the time. I was also born in Nyanga, in a township or section of the township called Old Location. And this was built in 1942. And I was born in a two-bedroomed house, but it's a four-roomed house. But it had electricity when it was built in 1942. I mean, I wasn't born then, but it had electricity. And it had a bathroom and a shower. So when I say to people, when they say, no, we as the ANC, we brought you electricity. No. Maybe others. I was born in a house with electricity. And this was a big privilege. Not because the other people wouldn't be able to connect electricity, but there was just no infrastructure for them to connect. So, telling my son, listen here, you know, behind my parents' house, I built a room. And the first time that your mother saw electricity or was in an electricity is when she visited me. So I moved into an open and then put on the light. That's the first time she saw electricity. I said, no, Dad, man, don't, please, don't. You always make stories. I said, that's true. Ask her. She didn't know electricity until she came to visit me. And the connection that happened in the vast of the townships happened later. But we were fortunate. But the fact that I was sort of privileged did not mean that I didn't see some of the influx control. And I always tell a story. When I was already living in Johannesburg, I came down, I think it was about 99, to bury a cousin brother. And I had to speak at the funeral and had to explain to the people at the funeral, the mourners, why this cousin brother was Michael Brown. Michael Brown. And what had happened to this cousin brother of mine, Bundlovu, is that he was living in Cape Town and didn't pay rent to the Bantu Affairs Administration. And when he had to explain why he's not, and the administrator just looked at his face, and on his passbook just put a stamp, endorsed out, which means that all his rights to remain in Cape Town were gone. Now, my cousin brother was streetwise. So he said, okay, I'm endorsed, meaning all the rights to remain here, renew, were gone. So he left, went to Joburg, and when he was in Joburg, he decided that he was going to be colored. And then he got an ID, And he came back to Cape Town as Michael Brown. So he kept the relationship with the family. As I said, he passed away in 1999. To now go back and say, look, I'm not Michael Brown, was too complicated. So at the funeral, I had to explain, because the death certificate said Michael Brown, and the undertakers could only put in that cross Michael Brown. So I had to explain that this is not Michael Brown. Now this example of this cousin of mine is something that thousands of people had experienced in Cape Town. A period of being endorsed out. Sometimes it's just a administrator who just thinks, it's Monday, you go. And I mean, I can tell you other stories of other people. But this was happening in Cape Town in terms of influx control.